All right, hello. I'm just gonna try and make it a quick video about fluoride, maybe touch on some things about some GMOs, genetically modified organisms, but mainly, first and foremost, fluoride. So, I just, this isn't well researched on my part. This is like my first over research, but I figured I'd just do sort of like a light, off the cuff lightning talk about it. And then if anybody actually does have any interest, I mean, even one person, if they just respond and say they want to know more, then I will dig in and spend more time on it. But otherwise, here we go. So, fluoride, this is all these pages. I don't want to spend too much time about where they're at and all that kind of stuff. So, the link's up here at the top. Basically, looking at this header fodder up here, we can see you can just search probably NIH, fluoride, fact sheet, something like that, and you'll probably end up here. I think, I typed even less keywords to get all this kind of stuff. And I tried to make the order so that it would somewhat flow and make sense. So anyway, introduction. Fluoride's a mineral naturally present in many foods and available as a dietary supplement. Fluoride is the ionic form of the element fluorine, and it inhibits or reverses the the initiation and progression of dental caries, tooth decay, and stimulates new bone formation. One thing I apologize in advance for is that sometimes when I'm doing this type of a presentation, oftentimes it's hard for me to multitask, especially if I'm not rehearsed or whatever. So I may just read things wrong or skip vital details or whatever. So I do encourage anybody with any interest to at least come take a gander for themselves and maybe read the entire article. Soil, water, plants, and foods contain trace amounts of fluoride. Most of the fluoride that people consume comes from fluoridated water, food and beverages prepared with fluoridated water, and toothpaste and other dental products containing fluoride. And then they come down here to say some more. Approximately 80% or more of orally ingested fluoride is absorbed into the gastrointestinal tract. In adults, about 50% of absorbed fluoride is retained in the body, with all but 1% stored in bone and teeth. They're citing some sources here. The other 50% is excreted in urine. In young children, up to 80% of absorbed fluoride is retained because more is taken up by bones and teeth than in adults. Individual fluoride status is not typically assessed, although fluoride concentrations can be measured in plasma, saliva, urine, bones, nails, hair, and teeth. Criteria for adequate high or low levels of fluoride in the body have not been established. I thought that was pretty strange because all of these places from the FDA, NIH, Wikipedia, and their sources, things like that, they all make some claim to like what an adequate amount is. There's even a unit called AI for like adequate intake. So it's pretty weird. Definitely, you got to do your own research. Even a lot of these papers and stuff, there'll be another paper that contradicts that one and whatever. So it's all subjective and rhetorical and contextual and all that kind of stuff, right? So ultimately, we just have to really make our own semi informed decisions about this kind of stuff. So they have the recommended intake amounts, intake recommendation for fluoride, other nutrients provided in the DRIs developed by the Food and Nutrition Board. I'm just trying to cherry pick what I want to talk about here. So, estimated averages requirements 50% of healthy individuals. So, anyway, you get down here and you have, of course, the age groups birth to 6 months, and it's very small male, female are all identical until you get up to the adult years, and then they say slightly less for females. Um, but yeah, so if you notice, it's very small, less than a milligram for small children. For medium-sized children, I guess you'd say it's 1 to 2 milligrams, and then for teenagers and adults, it's 3 to 4 milligrams. And over here, pregnant or lactating women should be 3 milligrams. So again, this is that daily adequate intakes right here. So that's super ironic that they would have that when they right here say criteria has not been established, but we've got criteria anyway. That's just pretty questionable. Maybe I'm dumb with this and I don't know what's going on. I'm definitely dumb. So definitely appreciate any feedback that could leave me with further information. So here's sources of it, can range from zero point 0.3 to 6.5. The more you read about this stuff, the more it just ranges. But I would say that's like roughly seems like a range that I see. And here's a typical thing too. You see that like tea black brewed 1 cup is typically, it can range from very low to very high, but anyway, you see this higher amount, and that seems to coincide with other sources that teas, for better or worse or true or false or whatever, seems to rank high. And then they have some other random things throughout here, but it's, I think some of these things, like I've seen lamb used, we'll see that in another source going forward. I think those are just kind of randomly picked as just sort of, here's a random thing that's not necessarily high or low or whatever. But yeah, potatoes, carrots, things like that that grow in the ground, I feel like those tend to be a little bit higher because fluoride in its more natural state is going to come from the crust, the earth, right? Is that sort of a thing. But the issue I have, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control F and I'm going to search for toxin. And then we're going to go, toxins not found on this page. Okay, so I guess what I was using this page for was just these gauges of how much they say. So they have like tolerable intake, uptake levels. They set it at 10 milligrams for adults in the US. It's only 7 in European countries. And somewhere that I read that I should be covering soon when I look up those toxins is that anything over 5 milligrams, according to that, that's, I believe, an FDA source. This is NIH, slightly different information, right? So I want to say the FDA, I won't talk about too much till we get there, but they're saying you can take up to, I forget how it's worded. Anyway, all this stuff I've been bouncing around and reading so much. But it sounds like you don't want to take more than this, is the way it's worded. It's not like, safe up to 10 milligrams. It's like definitely not safe up to 10 after 10 milligrams, I want to say. But anyway, it's all debatable, right? So I'll just keep moving on. Very small for young kids, less than a milligram up here. And then for, toddlers, it's a little over a milligram. Adolescents, anywhere from 2 to 10 milligrams. Interaction, references. Okay, I'm going to just move on here. Again, check these out for yourself. This one is PubMed, NIH. There's the URL, article PMC 4525626. This one is, you can probably just search for this, mitigation of fluorosis, or search for NIH fluorosis. You might even find other documents. So fluoride is required for normal growth of the bodies, plentiful. I'm kind of wishing I didn't highlight those now because I did have something highlighted down here. It's in drinking water. Drinking water is the largest contributor to daily fluoride intake. The behavior of fluoride ions in human can be regarded as a double-edged sword, right? Meaning both good and bad effects. Fluoride is beneficial in small amounts but toxic in large amounts, which again, that adequate uptake, right, is not established over here. So what exactly is a large amount? They're saying over 10 milligrams is the gist. Definitely over 10 seems to be the gist. Some people, 5 to 10, depending on your source. So fluoride is beneficial, has various forms, development. Fluorosis is a major health problem in 24 countries, including India, which lies in the geographical fluoride belt. But that, I don't know if that per se is the reason. I guess industrial mining or something. Various technologies are being used to remove fluoride from water, but still the problem has... So they're actually trying to remove fluoride in India. To review... so yeah, excessive amounts can contribute to fluorosis. So that's a problem in India with the double-edged sword and whatnot. I'm not going to dig into that. That's just something to note if you want to pursue it further. Or physiological conditions affect toxicity of ingested industrial fluoride. So industrial fluoride seems like, well, we wouldn't have anything to do with that in our drinking water, would we? We would be getting like naturally mined, like whatever. But if you think about even salt, especially in the US, people have what's called table salt, right? Iodized salt, where they put iodine in the salt and everything. And iodine's supposedly pretty good for us. And the reason they put it in the salt is because it bonds so well with the salt. But the actual salt that we call table salt is chemical. It's a chemical process that produces it. It's not like, that's why ideally we want at least sea salt, or preferably like pink Himalayan rock salt, right? Straight out of the Earth's crust, kind of a thing. The effects of calcium, blah blah blah, concentrations, solubility calculations, blood fluoride. I'm just going to skim through this. Environmental conditions. At a pH typical of gastric juice, fluoride is largely protonated as hydraulic. Okay, I must not have reviewed this article, so that's another article to go ahead and take a peek at for yourself. I believe that's on NIH as well. And moving along. So here's another thing. This was, you have to sign in or pay for this article, but it just goes on to say that fluoride ion contamination, especially in India and that type of thing, and it's actually, you know, considered like a pollution in water and whatnot. But, and it also says down here, making it widely used material and treatment of fluoride containing wastewater is among the, I want to read the whole thing. I'm trying to skim through it too fast. Among the minerals employed in absorption, atapulgite stands out as excellent. Okay, never mind. I did read this, and it basically is talking about fluoride as a, it's just an abstract. It's just what you see here. And it's just talking about it actually being like a pollutant in some areas and whatnot. Okay, right here's a super interesting article. I did not read the whole thing. I imagine it goes on to be, to give arguments on both sides, but I don't know for sure. It's at OSU, Oregon State University, right? EDU. So this is an article from a university. At the sign of the Honolulu, they have this for, I don't know, it seems very propagandic, so whatever side it's supposed to be on, I don't know if I really care, but it seems to be against fluoride, against polio vaccines, and mental hygiene, diabolical plan to transform the free intelligent mind. Yeah, who knows? Either way, could be. So right here, editor's note. In the early 20th century, dentists discovered that fluoride reduced the number of cavities in their patients' teeth, at least by 1940, right? Amidst much debate and rancor, fluoride was regularly added to American public drinking water supplies. Fluoridation has been hailed by some as a triumph of public health, but it was also, as historian Frank Zelko points out this month, a profitable way to put to use a waste byproduct from the production of fertilizer. Are you effing kidding me? And no, we're not. While Florida calls itself the Sunshine State from a geological and economic perspective, it could just as accurately be known as the Phosphate State. The so-called Bone Valley of Central Florida contains some of the largest phosphate deposits in the world, which supply global agriculture with one of its most important commodities, synthetic fertilizer. Not natural organic fertilizer, synthetic, right? In the process, the mining industry leaves behind a scarred landscape, denuded, I believe that's pronounced, of vegetation and pocked with vividly colored waste disposal ponds that one writer described as beautiful pools of pollution. Okay. I could, see that maybe, like if you've seen oil and water mix in the rain or something, and, it can look beautiful even though it's polluted. Phosphate loaded by elevator at Port Tampa, Florida, 1958. Highly toxic hydrogen fluoride and silicone tetrafluoride gases are byproducts of fertilizer production. Prior to the 1970s, these pollutants were vented into the atmosphere and gave Central Florida some of the most noxious air pollution in the country. During the 60s, however, complaints by farmers and ranchers eventually forced reluctant manufacturers to invest in pollution abatement scrubbers that converted toxic vapors into fluorosilicic acid, FSA, a dangerous but more containable liquid waste. I'm assuming that's what might be going on here. A safety instructor checking fluoridation levels at Fluoride feed station on Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 2016. I never thought about how much the word fluoride sounds like Florida, but I don't think it's related. The U.S. National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, OSHA, cautions that FSA, which is that fluoric acid stuff, an inorganic fluoride compound has dire health consequences for any worker that comes in contact with it. Breathing its fumes causes severe lung damage or death. An accidental splash on bare skin will lead to burning and excruciating pain. Fortunately, it can be contained, in high-density cross-linked polyethylene storage tanks, which that maybe must be what those are. It is in such tanks that the fluorosilicic acid has for the past half century been transported from Florida fertilizer factories to waste reservoirs throughout the United States. Once there, it is drip fed into drinking water. Yes, you read that correctly, heard that correctly. This is a practice that the American Dental Association and numerous scientists and public health officials described as the precise adjustment of the existing naturally occurring fluoride levels in drinking water to an optimal fluoride level, which supposedly hasn't been established, for the prevention of dental decay. All right, so there's more pictures. A worker watching the loading of powder fine phosphate, which he shouldn't even be that close to being exposed to, probably. I doubt that's, that's just the, the mineral that fluoride might be, the elements it might be attached to or whatever, or mixed in with, I'm assuming. The practice of adding fluoride compounds, mostly FSA and occasional sodium fluoride, to drinking water is known as community water fluoridation. It has been a mainstay of American public health and policy since 1950, even the 40s from what I've heard, but maybe they're saying that, maybe they first started experimenting in some places in the 40s and then it became super popular in the 50s, and continues to enjoy the support of government health agencies, dentists, and numerous others in the medical and scientific community. As with many chemical additives in the modern world, however, few people know much about it. Many are surprised to learn that unlike the pharmaceutical-grade fluoride in their toothpaste, the fluoride in their water is an untreated industrial waste product, one that contains trace elements of arsenic and lead. Without the phosphate industry's effluent, water fluoridation would be prohibitively expensive, and without fluoridation, the phosphate industry would be stuck with an expensive waste disposal problem. So this is, again, OSU EDU article. Toxic treatment, fluorides, transformation, industrial waste, public health miracle. So you search those keywords if you want to find it. For stuck with the disposal. Okay, there we go. So sorry, I don't know if I finished this last paragraph, so I'm going to read the whole thing because this is a key paragraph. I know I read the first sentence, sorry. Many are surprised to learn that unlike pharmaceutical-grade fluoride in their toothpaste, the fluoride in their water is an untreated industrial waste product, one that contains trace elements of arsenic and lead. Without the phosphate industry's effluent, water fluoridation would be prohibitively expensive. And without fluoridation, the phosphate industry would be stuck with an expensive waste disposal problem. Without fluoridation, right? So, in other words, what do they say? Like in Fight Club, they're selling our own fat asses back to us, or they're selling their own fat asses back to us. That's what I get out of it anyway. And you can see the more deeper, darker blood red things are. It says depicting the global fluoridation water usage with colors indicating the percentage of the population in each country with fluoridated water and natural and artificial sources. So not necessarily the level of fluoridation, but the level of population in fluoridated areas. I live in Oregon. To my knowledge, at least in Central Oregon, I don't believe the water is fluoridated. They had my child. They prescribed him fluoride pills, believe it or not. And at first I was all about it. I thought like, oh, okay, whatever. But then you talk to some people, and that's when I first started questioning fluoride, was when I talked to people and they're like, no, don't take those pills. That, don't have fluoridated water for a reason. And of course there were people on both sides, some people saying, hey, make sure your kid takes them and whatnot. So only a handful of countries fluoridate their water, such as Australia, Ireland, Singapore, and Brazil, in addition to the United States. Western European nations have largely rejected the practice. Nonetheless, dental decay in Western Europe has declined at the same rate as in the United States over the past half century. In fact, the more one looks at the history of fluoridation, the more it appears to be a relic of the sort of mid 20th century scientific incaution that gave us DDT, thalidomide, and other attempts at quote unquote better living through chemistry, right? That mid 1900s whole thing where everything just became, I mean, it wasn't just the mid, but it seemed to peak in the mid 1900s of that whole like Dow, DuPont, all that crap. This is not to vilify the early fluoridationists who had legitimate reason to believe they had found an easy, affordable way to counter a significant public health problem. Doesn't sound like they did. But anyway, it sounds like it goes on to be, arguably a balanced article. So definitely read it for yourself. I would say if you only read one thing, maybe make it that article. Okay, ingestion. So this is Wikipedia's page on fluoride, and fluoride is spelled Fluoride, not like flower-eyed, but fluoride is how it's spelled. Ingestion. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the dietary reference intakes, which is the highest level of daily nutrient intake that is likely to pose no risk of adverse health effects. So that's what I was saying about that. About that 10 milligrams. Oh, why is it scrolling when I select it? That specify 10 milligrams a day for most people, corresponding to 10 liters of fluoridated water with no risk. Which, if we look again, the levels in the water vary along with what you're ingesting outside of the water, but they do seem to claim that the water is the biggest source of it. So, anyway, they're saying the highest level of daily that is likely to pose no risk. So if we invert that statement, over 10 or more milligrams is likely to pose a risk of health adverse effects, I would assume. That's just inverting that statement. For young children, the values are smaller, ranging from 0.7 milligrams to 2.2 milligrams for infants. Water and food sources of fluoride include community water fluoridation, seafood, tea, and gelatin. Gelatin's a byproduct of the beef industry typically. I don't know for sure if it's only beef that is gelatin, if they extract that from other animals' bones and whatnot. So, yeah, and of course there's tea again. And seafood. Seafood is typically low, but there is, I guess you could say, some significant amount. Soluble fluoride salts. Okay, down here, soluble fluoride salts, of which sodium fluoride is the most common, are toxic. All right, the soluble means, I'm assuming, water soluble, right? Something we typically want to pit things that are water soluble in our body, unless we want like insoluble fiber or something specific like that, right, to push through stuff. But otherwise, short of those types of things, again, I'm an idiot. Don't trust me, but this is just my idiot knowledge. So sodium fluoride is the most common. And it's toxic. Well, if we click over to this next tab over here, we have sodium fluoride, an inorganic compound with the formula blah blah blah, is a colorless white solid. It's readily soluble in water. It's used trace amounts of fluoridation of drinking water. It's what's typically used in drinking water to prevent tooth decay and, supposedly bone health, but they always just label it with that prevent tooth decay. And if you look with tap water, a lot of it only has to be like, at least years ago when I looked into it, it just has to be good enough to brush your teeth with. So maybe that's the argument. Maybe they're arguing within context of like, oh, it's okay to fluoridate water because you're only supposed to be brushing your teeth. You're not supposed to be drinking large quantities of it. Whereas a lot of people, especially people who don't have a high income and transportation or whatever to be buying large amounts of bottled water and things like that, are going to rely on that tap, including for their children. And in toothpaste, pharmaceuticals, which is what I always say, get it from toothpaste if you're so worried about it. Me and everybody else that I know that I respect their opinion, we all choose to use toothpaste that actually does not contain fluoride. I'm probably the worst spokesman for that because I have a genetic problem with my teeth where they just hollow from the inside out, and I'm down to very few teeth because of that. So sodium fluoride, but the other people I know don't nearly have the teeth. Like my wife in particular, she has next to no teeth problems. She doesn't use any fluoride. Sodium fluoride is sold in tablets for cavity prevention. So these are like, I believe the ones they were giving my son were like pink and they were very small. But yeah, it's sodium fluoride. It's back over here, of which is the most common or toxic, have resulted in both accidental and self-inflicted deaths from acute poisoning. Probably from people, like kids finding the bottle and thinking that it's like candy, I would assume. Maybe the lethal, because you would definitely have to drink a lot of water to get like that type of poisoning. The lethal dose for most adult humans is estimated at 5 to 10 grams, not milligrams. So milligram means 1,000th of a gram, right? So this would be 10,000 milligrams, or 5,000 to 10,000 milligrams, which is equivalent to 32 to 64 milligrams elemental fluoride per kilogram of body weight. A case of fatal poisoning of adults with average 4 grams of sodium fluoride is documented. Excuse me. All right, so I'm going to move on. There's the sodium. Moving on. This document, I'm going to press F5 and see if a goofy Firefox will not glitch out and show us the whole page here. So this is the EU's page for tolerable upper intake levels for vitamins and minerals, Scientific Committee on Food. As much as I don't like a lot of this from 2006, a lot of the EU's takes on a lot of things. When it comes to nutritional supplements and whatnot, like this type of information, I tend to respect it more than a lot of large governmental agencies, as far as dosages go. But otherwise, if they allow too many politics into their stuff, of course, I just don't even care for it. But anyway, with my shallow knowledge on the EU for vitamins and minerals, it seems to be a fairly trustworthy source. I did not review this document. I clicked on it, I believe, off of one of these Wikipedia articles or something, maybe an FDA or NIH article. I clicked on it as just, it linked this as one of the documents that they got the source from. So I did want to at least mention it. I'm not going to take a bunch of time and search it right now. Again, if anybody's interested, so tolerable upper intake levels for vitamins and minerals at Europa.eu, which the fact that that's named after a pagan goddess, that's a whole nother rabbit hole on its own. But anyway, moving on. So right here, product information, product import, export, use, and disposal. Toxicological profile for fluorides, hydrogen fluoride, and fluorine, again from NIH. This is that top introduction for this paper. It looks like there is a PDF version available for download here of the entire paper. Maybe it's all readable inline right here. I don't know. So yeah, right here in this production 5.1, the most important natural starting material for the production of fluorine chemicals, including fluorine, hydrogen, whatever. There's all that. And then you get down here. In addition, some byproduct calcium fluoride was recovered from industrial waste streams. An estimated 8 to 10,000 metric tons of fluorspar are recovered each year from uranium enrichment, stainless steel pickling, and petroleum alkylation. So I'm wondering, this is industrial fluoride, right? So that was just something that caught my eye. I'm totally reading it mostly out of context and everything, but I have to ask the question, industrial fluoride, are we literally having drip fed uranium byproducts in our water supply? Maybe not everywhere, but in some regions and stuff, even in the United States. That is bizarre, right? Especially when you consider cancer. I went back to study I had, marked it on my calendar, so to speak, for whenever the Fukushima disaster happened. And I did the math on how many years it would be until we should see an uptake in particular types of cancer if the hype was real about the west coast of the United States getting contaminated and whatnot. And when I went back to check those numbers, the numbers of those types of cancers and so many types of cancers were so through the roof that it was impossible to determine the nuance of whether or not Fukushima had an impact. So I thought that was super bizarre. Coming over here, what is this one? It's another NIH, hydrofluorosis in humans and domestic animals, worldwide health problem. Okay, so this is fluorosis, right, is what they're talking about, and caused by a prolonged period of fluoride exposure through drinking of fluoride contaminated water. So Probably water with too high of fluoride. So, but in recent years, due to rapid industrialization of India, diverse serious health problems among industrial workers and residents, domestic animals living in industrial areas. So, again, this looks like it's mainly targeting places like India where they're getting definite overexposure to fluoride and having issues with that. Again, read it for yourself. We come over here. This is Wikipedia. Dental fluorosis is the article there. And fluorosis, Fluorosis. Scrolling down here to the causes section, it says many well-known sources of fluoride may contribute to overexposure, including dentifrice, fluoridated mouth rinse, which young children may swallow, excessive ingestion of fluoride toothpaste, which we know even if they're only swallowing small amounts of it, they're way more sensitive, right? According to what they print in here. Excessive ingestion of fluoride toothpaste, bottled waters which are not tested for their fluoride content, inappropriate use of fluoride supplements, ingestion of food, especially imported from other countries, and public water fluoridation. And the reason I have this highlighted is because public water fluoridation, this last thing, it says the last of these sources is directly or indirectly responsible for 40% of all fluorosis. So, and they say the resulting effect due to fluoridation is largely and typically aesthetic. So I assume what they're saying there is you're going to get discoloration of your teeth because of fluoride, which you would think it should have the opposite effect, right? But anyway, as opposed to if you get beyond that aesthetic part, it actually starts eating holes in the teeth because it's just a nasty chemical, right? So what they're saying is nearly half of what was it for adolescents? I think it was referring, if I remember, again, my eyes glaze over when I'm trying to, but if you read this dental fluorosis at Wikipedia causes, if you read this section, I think it's mainly leaning towards adolescents. I should almost search for that word. I don't even know how to spell adolescence. So right here, what do we have? Figures document another 30% increase among American teens since the previous decade, with total adolescent population impact 61% afflicted. More than 1 in 5 American teens, 23%, have moderate to severe dental fluorosis on at least 2 teeth. So that's, that's actually closer to 1 in 4 because 1 in 5 is 20%, 1 in 4 is 25%. So they're definitely rounding down there, but whatever. Maybe it was 2.5 rounded up and they're just rounding the other way. But yeah, so, with the 40%, 60%, roughly half of people are experiencing fluorosis, which is an overdose in fluoride, which I think is super crazy. Okay, so anyway, there's that. That's the whole fluoride thing. And you know what? I think just to keep this succinct, I'll just stop this video here and I'll make another video for the GMO stuff and go down that rabbit hole. Thanks a lot for watching. If you checked it out, I hope you found some of this informative. And again, please don't hesitate to either ask me more questions and prompt me to go and do more research, or just even better yet, research it for yourself and let us know what you find. Thanks. Bye-bye.